Hello, this is my fourth attempt at recording this voiceover, because I'm a little bit rusty, so I think the problem is I keep talking very quickly, so I'm going to try and talk a little bit more slowly, return to my ASMR roots that hardcore fans of the channel will be familiar with. This is Greg. Greg is a gluttonous being who, you know, whether it's fireflies or his blue Minotaur pate sandwiches, or whatever fishy delight he is attempting to find in the lake he's perched next to, he will devour and take great pleasure in doing so. So a reflection of myself, really, which is only apt because Greg has been made as the draw this in your style challenge to celebrate me hitting about 4,000 followers on Instagram, which might seem like a bit of a strange number to celebrate, but I've been stuck at about 3,500 for so long, and I sort of just wanted an excuse to do something fun with all the lovely artists that follow me and interact with me in some way or another. So here he is. Greg's being drawn here. This is another difference, is if you're familiar at all with any of my sort of previous videos, I'm known, I think, as the guy that does a lot of painting. But this year I've been diving headfirst into an awful lot of drawing, and I mean tons and tons and tons. I've drawn thousands of insects, animals, birds, cars, all sorts of sort of weird stuff, and I've been doing it daily pretty much. To rectify a problem, and it's a problem that I think a lot of people maybe struggle with, which is when you're beginning, you tend to skip over the drawing stuff quite quick because it's seen as maybe an inferior equivalent to painting, or at least it's seen as the first step before you move on to painting, right? It's always, okay, I'm learning drawing, oh, right, now I can move on to this other thing, which we talk about as painting. But painting still involves drawing in some way, and that skill really does need to be honed and practiced for an awful long time. So if you've caught any of the streams or anything, you will have seen me drawing, but if you just watch my videos, this might be a fairly new thing, seeing me draw instead of go straight into paint. But I've really been enjoying it, and it's benefited my painting massively. One of the main things that it's done in terms of benefiting my painting is it's made me slow down, which is a whole other thing that, again, if you're at all familiar with me rambling on the internet, you'll know is something I've struggled with in the past, right? Is a lot of my paintings I would only do for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, right? Because effectively I was reluctant to save out a Photoshop document, right? So I was limited by how long I could sit at my computer in one go, which with my attention span is not very long at all. So about an hour and a half. But drawing is, I think, one of the first things that's maybe helped me push past that initial hour barrier, is actually, well, how about I do a pretty complete and comprehensive line drawing of this thing first, and then bring it into paint, because it almost defines a boundary of a subject that needs to be completed, if that makes sense. If you go straight into paint with shape and shape alone, I almost feel that you can get away with stopping the painting at any time, right? Because you're going to have these like vague, blurry shapes that are interacting with each other, and you can always pass that off as being artistic license or your style, or it does kind of look cool, those like unfinished sketches, you know, with all the fancy brushwork that's going on. But when you have a pretty comprehensive line drawing, you're forced, I think, to refine it a little bit further and paint into it a bit more, because compared with the precision of the line drawing, those messy brush marks sometimes feel unfinished rather than just artistic and messy, right? So, the other thing is, as soon as I got past that initial hour and a half barrier that I had been stopping, it's kind of difficult to stop. So, initially, really struggling to paint past an hour, and then I went up to 2 hours, and then I went up to 3 hours, and then 4 hours, and I'm getting more in the habit of painting across multiple sessions. Streaming has really been helping with that as well, because all of a sudden, I almost have a reason to return to the same thing so that people can follow along with its process or creation. But this particular painting, 7 hours, right? That brings its own challenges and its own things that you can learn from it. So again, I think the shorter painting relies more on this overall vague, blurry vision of an image that can be quite visually appealing, right? It's nice when you have a loose painting with loose brushwork, but it never gives you the opportunity to get specific about what exactly is this form doing, and how fast is the form gradating away from me or towards me, and what's the material, what's the texture of it on the surface, how exactly does that texture pick up light or reflect light in some way, does it have subsurface scattering, how is all of that stuff actually helping me out with some kind of story or composition that I have planned. So the investment of more time into a painting is giving me more things to work on, which I think is challenging me more as an artist. There was a point at which I was doing these really quick paintings, and I was really feeling like there was only so much I was getting out of them, because within that time limit, I'm only ever really establishing these larger forms and larger shapes, and that's not a bad thing. I'm quite thankful that I did that for years and years and years. I think it gave me some really good insight into how to paint those larger forms and larger shapes. One thing that John Singer Sargent always told his students was to make sure that they concentrate on the overall modelling of the basic forms of the head, rather than worrying about individual eyebrows or nostrils or anything like that. So it has been good for me, but it's about time that I moved on to these more complex things. You can see I'm trying to get the saliva dripping off the sandwich and then placing that just subtly back into his mouth, and I'm having a lot of fun with getting nitty-gritty with a lot of this information, and I'm always giggling to myself as I'm doing that. Even here on the chest, well, is it made of individual planks? How are they clasped together by something? Are they going to have little reflected beveled edges? I'm modelling out all of this information a lot more clearly for myself, which is really cool, actually. I do implore you to join the Draw This In Your Style. So the hashtag is MorrowDTIYS on Instagram, or you can drop it in the Patreon. That'd be really cool as well, or the public Discord. But the Patreon is the other thing I wanted to talk about. I've been a lot more active there. We've been doing classes. We did a class the other day on drawing and painting for longer, actually, which was really cool. But yeah, it's sort of how I've been. I'm interested to hear how you guys have been and what you lot have been up to. And I do hope you join in with the challenge and see how that goes. But I want to get back into making these videos more regularly, and so I hope you accept that means more stream of consciousness rambling anyway. So join in with the streams. Come and say hello. It's usually in the morning when I'm sat drawing. And I hope you like Greg. You can see how slimy he is from maybe all of the fatty foods he's ingesting. But other than that, have a lovely day. Keep up the painting. And if you've got any questions about Greg or the Draw This In Your Style or anything else, just leave them in the comments. And that will be that.